Okay, so in this lesson in Adobe Premiere Pro, we are going to start talking about some other effects that exist beyond the straight motion effects that exist in a layer. So I'm going to bring in a layer. Here's a layer of a scene we shot of me in a basement looking around a corner. I'll actually start back here. We'll start with the scene of me in the basement here, freaking out. Cool. Excellent. And I'm going to just add this into the timeline. I'm going to hit the backslash button to make this full screen. And we're just going to talk about some of the other effects that exist in this effects collection. So we looked at video transitions. We explored all the video transitions that exist. But now we want to look at video effects. And there's a whole list of video effects. And you can explore them. Some of them I use. Some of them make sense to me. And some of them I've never touched before. But you use what you can use. And you can see what's common and what's there. So we'll look at a category like the blur and sharpen category. In the blur and sharpen, we have my good old friend, the Gaussian blur. And the Gaussian blur, I'm going to click, and I can do one of two things here. I can click and drag and just pull this onto here and pull this onto the clip. The other thing I can do is if I have this selected, I can go here to the effects controls, and you see that I have the regular motion effects. That includes position and scale and rotation, etc. But I can just click and drag up and pull Gaussian blur here at the bottom, and it adds the Gaussian blur underneath time remapping. And now the Gaussian blur has a couple different controls. It has a blurriness amount, a blurriness dimensions, and a repeat edge pixels. So we'll just crank up I'm going to turn off the repeat edge pixels just to show you. We're going to go to blurriness amount, and I'm going to pull and drag and crank this up, and I'm going to make this blurry. We'll make this 150 blurry. Now we can blur this inside of here based on a horizontal blur, a vertical blur, or we can do a horizontal and vertical blur. And you can see the difference there in the screen. One pulls one direction, etc. And then it can pull both directions there. Now, this repeat edge pixel control is actually because when you blur stuff, we talked about this with After Effects before, but when you blur stuff, sometimes the edges look a little bit dark. They look a little bit soft, they're a little bit dark because you're pulling pixels away from the edge, and it kind of does that. And the repeat edge pixel checkbox here fixes some of that and repeats the edge pixels, and you'll see, boom, oh, look at that. This is more kind of, vignetted. This is less vignetted, and so we can leave that on. That is on by default. That is there. And you can see here that we have stopwatches here. So based on the last lesson, we learned that we could say, let's go to here to 12 frames here. We'll have this be out of focus here. Or maybe we'll have this be out of focus at the beginning. We'll have this be out of focus, and then we'll have this be here, and then this will drift into focus. So this will go back to 0. So I have keyframes. So I turn my stopwatch on. I'll do that again just so you can see that again as an idea. I went back to the beginning here. I turned on the stopwatch. That said, at this point, at the very beginning of this clip, it's completely blurred out. Then I go to about a half second forward. And now with the stopwatch on, if I change this value to anything else, if I change it to even 149, bam, and now it's another keyframe. One there, and a half a second later that just says, hey, it unblurred one pixel unblurred. That's really nothing. Let's go to 0. We'll update this keyframe to 0. So now at this keyframe, it's at 150 blurred. At this keyframe, it's at 0 blurred. And so here, it is going to unblur. So we have a little, a little kind of out of focus, in focus, not done in the camera, but done in post-production. We have a little blur. But then I decide, what? I kind of almost like for this action sequence here, this horizontal blur. Yeah, it feels more emotionally gripping to me to have this out of focus. Awesome. Looks there like that. We're going to look here, and we're going to go to this here. And then, my boss comes along and says, yeah, great, Chad, but I think, what I want? I want this rather than this be yellow color. It's very yellow. We were in the basement. There was this harsh yellow light. Instead of this yellow, we need a black and white. We do need a black and white. We need to be really black and white. So where's the black and white effect? Is it under color correction? No, it's not under color correction. There's brightness and contrast. There's also lumetri color. We can look at lumetri color and see what we can do with that inside of there, but that's not worth it. Let's see, is it under distort? No, it would be under distort. And here's the thing. Sometimes you don't know where effects are, but you assume there's a black and white. So God bless a search engine up here that will tell you black ampersand white. It's under image control. So it's under video effects, image controls, black and white. We have it listed there. Here's black and white, here's black and white. And we can just drag that on. And so we're going to drag that on to here and make this black and white. So we have this. Now it's in black and white. Now that's a relatively simple black and white. If we wanted to, we could try to maybe even make this more, cinematic. We could go to get rid of the black and white. We go back to video effects and go to color correction, and I know brightness and contrast is in here. What if I wanted to just quickly change the contrast? So I just added the contrast in there. Now I have Gaussian blur, black and white, and brightness and contrast, and I can crank up the contrast and make this more contrasty, very moody. You know, this might be something I might do in color correction. If we do a lesson on color correction, we'll talk about how to really kind of tweak this. But I'm doing kind of an amateur job here of just kind of making this cool. This is now set here in black and white. So these are effects I can use. If I don't want to see these effects, I could temporarily turn them off. There's a little checkbox to temporarily turn them off. I could also say, hey, let's leave them on. But you know what? I don't want the brightness and contrast. I don't want the black and white. My boss was dumb. I think the yellow really works. And I really like this as an idea here. So we're going to take this and have this here. We're going to cut here maybe to a wide shot. So I'm looking off to the left here. We're going to add in a shot here. So we'll go back to this chase footage. We'll go to this wide shot here. See if there's a scene of me looking off in that direction. Pick me up right there. There we go. Maybe there's another shot. I like this. This one's through the grate. There's a shot of me through the grate here. Let's see. There's another shot of a close of me through the grate. But those are too similar, I think. I think they're going to look like a jump cut. Let's go to this shot. Let's just line up exactly where I'm looking to the left. And we're going to go here. Whoops, right there. Cool. And I'm going to add this shot in here. And then I look around the corner. So then there's me looking around the corner. So we're going to add that in there. And I could even back this up to say, let's cut this back to me looking forward. Hand leaves the face. I'm trying to line this up so I get some kind of, you know, there, right about there. Hand comes down, right about there. I think I take there. Now the eyes are open in this one. The eyes are closed in this one. Is there a point at which I blink? Or is there a point at which the eyes are open? I don't know. Let's look here. We're going to try and make this work. Maybe like that from there. See if this overwrites. Let's see. I'm going to hit overwrite. So I'm going to overwrite this clip right there. Boom. See if this lines up. And now I have this in here. It's not bad. I mean, it's not great, but it's not bad. Yeah, I don't know if I like that. Let's see if we tried where my head turns and looks to the left. So let's see if we picked up from there. And picked up just from where I'm looking off to the left, and we did that. And we overwrote right there. Overwrote? Yeah, that's okay. It's really quick. It is what it is. We could say let's delete this and let's trim this back, and we're going to go here and roll this forward. And we're just going to keep this in the close-up. I start to look this way, and I start to look around the corner here. I'll catch myself right there. So we're just going to let this be on this shot here. More personal, more emotional. We're going to cut you around the corner, boom. And then I think I have a shot here of me looking around the corner. Just to get this right about there. We'll time this out so it looks, you know, match on action kind of thing. And we'll come back. And so now we'll just overwrite that on there and we'll say, cool, let's just look at how that looks. Yeah, I like that better. That's a better look. That's a better overall. That's a better look. I mean, that really works for me kind of smoothly. Cool. So let's just say, okay, so now I can just start playing with this here. And there's some other effects I can do because this is a lesson on effects. So why am I worrying about how great my shots look? Let's focus on effects here. So let's see. There's a couple different effects we can look at, and we'll look at through all of them. So there's the adjust effects. There's an extract effect, a levels control. This is kind of a control that will do a little bit of control for color correction. There's a proc amp control, which does some basic controls for color correction. We can see those. It's kind of a more broad. There is a brightness and control and a contrast and a hue and saturation. That is the proc amp. It's an adjustment control. So Premiere looks at it as basically an adjustment as opposed to a color correction. I think it's in the wrong place. There's a couple different types of blurs, including something called sharpen and something called unsharp mask. Unsharp mask, man, this one was always weird to me because it always sounded like unsharp mask makes it less sharp. Right? Because it's going to unsharp it. It's really technical and it's really involved, but the truth is it actually makes it sharper. So we can see if we can make the shots any sharper using the unsharp mask. We can crank this up and try to make this sharper. You can see it gets a little grittier. I don't know if you're gonna be able to see that through Zoom or through YouTube, but yeah, a little sharper on the eyes there. So we could use the unsharp mask. That is an effect that exists. It's in there, does those kind of things. So we'll look through and see some other effects that we can explore. Under the channel things, there's invert. Invert would do that. I mean, if you really wanted to invert, you could invert the RGB values and make a negative. We could do like a random flash frame of that for some kind of, you know, tension effect, some kind of really overblown tension effect. I'm gonna hit Command K, make an edit here. I'm gonna jump forward maybe like 2 frames, Command K, go there. I'm gonna zoom in, hit the equal sign and zoom in, and we're gonna put this little invert flash frame there, just for an effect. We'll get rid of it, I promise. But now it's very, very emotionally, like, I don't know, very psychotic right there. You know, it's going, poor Chad's going through a psychotic episode right there. Let's undo that. I just want to show you could do that. We're going to undo a couple times, get rid of that, etc. there. The distort effects. So we have a bunch of distort effects here. And the distort effects include stuff like, for example, there's corner pin. I do love corner pin. Corner pin is great. If you had a scene where you wanted to put something somewhere into some other location, say, for example, we want to take this and we want to put this in a different room on a different wall. And I'm going to take, for example, we'll go here and we'll say, inside of here, we're going to import, Command I, import, and we're going to go into another piece of footage that I have of here. We're going to go to the tunnel here. And inside the tunnel, let's see, tunnel would be in tracking. Cool. And so we'll go in the tunnel here, and we'll say, in the tunnel here, we're going to have the tunnel. And I'm going to take this layer here, and I'm going to put this layer up top here, and put this on top here, and have this up here. And I'm going to take the tunnel. This is the shot of the tunnel here. We're going to have the tunnel here. And I'm just going to park here in the tunnel. And I'll show you a quick thing I can do. I'm going to do the tunnel from here to here. Just from there to there. We'll take it from there to there. And I'm just going to throw this down on the timeline on V1. We'll just not do the audio. We'll just overwrite the video and throw it down there. So we just have the tunnel there like so. One of the things I could do is I could take this video, I could go to Effects Controls. I'm going to temporarily lower the opacity to 50% because I really want to show you what the corner pin does. So this is the 50%. That's kind of weird and creepy looking. That's really intense. Yeah, I like it. But the corner pin, go back to Effects, we'll go to corner pin, and we'll throw the corner pin on there. And we'll throw the corner pin. And the corner pin, when you click on the corner pin, it actually shows little pins. Let me make this a little bit smaller. We'll go down to 50% here. Whoops, maybe we'll go to 25%. Little small screen, 20%. It shows these little pins here. And these pins would work that they'll pull and turn this image into weird directions. So they'll basically turn this image into weird directions. So if you wanted to, we'll go a little bit bigger here. We'll go back to fit. And in here, we're going to take this and put this on the wall here. We're going to put this on the ground on the corner right here. And put this right like here, and then put this over here on the wall here, and you can kind of line this video up exactly perfectly on the wall. We'll raise the opacity back to 100%, and now this is like golden, perfectly against the wall, exactly where it should be, against the wall there, and you can kind of have it lined up. So you can kind of distort it in a way that, you know, if you want to put a video into a blank TV screen or onto a wall or something like there, you could put it there like so. I like how the brick almost looks like it almost fits into the scene appropriately. But that is the corner pin. That is an effect. There's some other effects we have here. We have lens distortion. Lens distortion would kind of create some curvature, either curve this in or curve this out. Create some kind of weird lens distortion. You could lens distort and then scale up, obviously. You don't have some kind of weird lens distortion idea. That's way too much. That's really intense. Anyway, that's lens distortion. You can do some lens distortion. There's spherize. I also want to show in a second, I want to show this idea of transform. The transform effect provides you with a number of controls, including anchor point, position, scale, skew, rotation, and opacity. And I want to show you why this exists. It always looks confusing to me because you're like, oh, I already have position, scale, rotation, opacity. I have these controls here, so why do you give me another effect? Why is there another effect that also does this? Well, that's kind of silly. Anyway, I'll show you a reason why. If we look at an effect like, let's say, image controls, I'm going to take a guess. Image controls, nope, not. Let's go in here and say, under video effects, no, I see I can't even find it. Utility, man, I'm not going to find it. All right, I'm going to look it up. I always want to believe I can find it. There is a crop effect, and it's under video effects transform crop. And so here's the video effects transform crop, and we're going to go here and apply the crop effect. we'll delete the crop effect now, or we'll delete it from here from the search. And so here, I want to talk about this as an idea. If I were to say, let's make this really, super ultra wide screen, maybe like some kind of cinematic look there. We really want to take the top off of this, and we want to crop the top down and crop this here. I'm going to get rid of the tunnel. I'll just drag this down and delete that. We'll put this back to what it was. So now we want to make this super, superly, cut down. And we'll just cut this into here so it's very, very intense, very dramatic there. Well, I don't like this framing. So now what I want to do is I want to take this. I'll take 25% off this side. And I'll take 25% off this side. And I've taken 25% off different sides. So I've cropped this in a very intense look. The problem is that I can't move my face inside of here. Because what's going to happen is that if I use the position controls, it's going to move the whole thing. It's going to move this up or down like there. Now, what I want to do in this case is I don't want to do this. What I want to use is a separate effect, like a transform effect. And the reason being is because this transform effect will force it to happen after the fact. So I'm going to distort transform, and then here with the distort transform, I can now take this, I can move this up or down, which is fine, but I can also take the transform and put it before the crop effect, which will offset this and then crop inside of here. So now there's just me, my face, forehead cropped in there. So I could have this cropped, but then move it back and forth. So you see the order of operations here. It's transform first and then crop effect, but it's not this transform because this one kind of oversees everything else. And so scaling this would scale everything, and moving position would move everything, even the effects that are on the layer. So this position and this scale and this rotation rotates everything. This, like if I did a rotation here now, it's going to rotate the whole layer and rotate like this, which is what it does. But if I want to just rotate my face inside of here, I could say transform, rotate. It's a distortion effect. So I could say rotation here, it would rotate this, but it wouldn't rotate the crop. I could make some kind of weird, kind of surreal looking intense thing here, just kind of like boom there. Move this over a bit, scale it up a little bit, something, and have a real, kind of intense scene there. So that transform control exists because it's a distortion effect, but it's a distortion effect that's sort of, I don't know, I think you understand the idea. It works as a separate effect that isn't doing it to the whole layer. So just an interesting idea of a thing you can do, a thing that works. There, we'll get rid of the crop effect. We're going to reset all this. We'll reset all the motion controls just so they're back to normal. I think they're all back to normal, but we scaled up a little bit. Anyway, so we have some of that in there. Let's keep looking at the video effects, see what else we have. There's some distort effects, which we saw before. Spherize, turbulent displace, twirl, warp stabilizer. We looked at warp stabilizer in the After Effects lesson, but warp stabilizer also exists in here. So if this footage is shaky, and this footage is a little bit shaky, we have this being a little bit shaky, we could reduce some of the shake. And the way this works is it would say, hey, let's go here to warp stabilize and apply warp stabilizer on here. Now, when we apply warp stabilizer, it's going to analyze this. And so right now it's analyzing, and then it will stabilize. It did it really quick. It's really quick. The warp stabilizer inside Premiere, I'm really impressed with. It does it really quick. This is set warp stabilizer to smooth motion, which means if there's some kind of panning inside of this, it'll determine that some of this is panned and will keep the panning, but otherwise it'll keep the image relatively steady. This image looks a little bit psychotic in this. I've never done it with this footage before, which actually makes a cool effect. It makes it kind of surreal. But this is because it's using something called subspace warp. And because it's using subspace warp, it warps the image a little bit. And because my face is taking up so much of this frame, that actually looks kind of psychotic. We could switch this to a different mode to say perspective, and then it would restabilize and probably still doing this more stabilized there. We could use warp stabilizer with a different example, but trust me, warp stabilizer for most scenes, if you have a generic scene, we could bring something else in here really quick. Really quick, we'll bring in some other footage. Command I will bring in some footage of, say, Let's bring in some goat footage. I know, I didn't want to go to goat footage today, but we're going to bring in some goat footage. We'll bring in some B-roll here just to show you an idea of what this looks like. We'll go here and say icons. Let's see. Let's find something I know is a little bit shaky, but we'll try to make it more sturdy. We'll take this. Maybe we'll take a wider shot here. We'll take a wider shot of the yoga teacher. Something like this. Yeah, B10. We'll bring that in here. We'll just bring in B10 here. This is not going to work with this project at all. We're going to have this here. Actually, that's a pretty sturdy shot. You know, that shot is locked down, I think. All right, and now I'm just wasting time here. Let's see. We'll take a look at the other shot I was going to look at here. A15. Yeah, look at A15. All right. See how A15 looks. All right, so A15 is a little bit shaky. We'll just take a couple seconds of this. We'll take about 10 seconds of this. Boom, I just jumped forward 10 seconds. I'm going to add this in here. I just want to show you what warp stabilizer does. This is just this shot here. It's a little bit shaky. We're going to go here to effects, go to image controls, and go to, not image controls, go to distort warp stabilizer, and we'll warp stabilize this thing. It's going to analyze in the background. So it's going to start to analyze this footage. It says it's analyzing right here, 95%. Boom, it's now stabilizing. Boom, and this should make this shot relatively stable. Oh man, that's pretty stable. Yeah, look at that. Look at before and after. I mean, look at what it looked like before. Before, it was very shaky. There was a lot of movement, head movement there. It moved around, it was bouncy. We apply that warp stabilizer, boom. It just applies that, and then all of a sudden, it's really super stable footage. There's other ways to stabilize, but I really do like the warp stabilizer. It's a great thing. We're going to take this. We're going to say, let's just option delete it, get rid of it, and say we're going to go back to here because I think this is the footage I want to work with. We'll pretend that we never saw good old Mai and her goat footage. Anyway, so we're going to stick here, and we're going to look more at effects and see some other effects that exist there. Under the generate category, you do have lens flare. If you want to make this very, you know, like a Marvel movie, I guess, we could add some lens flare in there. You see the lens flare under effects controls. We'll click on the layer. Make sure we click on the layer. Here's the lens flare. The lens flare has a flare center. We can move the flare. It has a flare brightness. We could crank up the lens flare, make it brighter, make it less, make it just a little bit of lens flare. And there's actually a flare type. There's actually 3 types. The 50 to 300 millimeter zoom, the 35 millimeter prime, looks like that, and the 105 millimeter prime, looks like that. I like the 105 millimeter prime. We'll take this, we'll animate this. We'll say flare center. We'll grab the flare center, we'll pull the flare center over here, and then we'll just go a couple seconds further. This will be very, you know, J.J. Abrams-esque. We'll just move this over horizontally. There's a little flare. Oh yeah, it's like a Star Trek movie. Who doesn't love a little bit of lens flare? I don't, but you know, I want to show it to you. There's some things there. We can look here under image controls. Let's just look at image controls. There's my black and white. There's my gamma correction. There's some stuff there. There's some immersive video controls. These are for doing VR. Maybe in a future lesson we'll talk about doing VR, but there's some other things that were part of the VR controls. If you're working with, you know, 360 video and you want to do some VR stuff, we can go there. There's some keying controls. There's Luma key, color key, and the Ultra key, as well as track mats. Track mats are kind of fun. We'll look at that. We'll do a whole lesson on keying, so we'll look at those kind of effects there. I have a collection of Red Giant stuff. These are a bunch of plugins by Red Giant Magic Bullet, Red Giant Trap Code. We have a whole bunch of those effects there. So if you wanted to do like Red Giant Shine, you can do Red Giant Shine, and you can apply Red Giant Shine, which would apply weird glimmery shines to this if you want to do that. So you can buy third-party plugins, have some Red Giant Shine there, boost light, boom, there you get some beamy light there. Whew, very intense, very kind of, you know, ethereal, I guess, something. Anyway, you can change the colorize and choose different 3-color gradients. Let's see, romantic, oh, look how romantic. That's a little too much boost light, I think. Maybe we'll just move to 5. There we have a little boost light. Oh, it's very romantic. Now, what you're going to notice here is that some of these effects will slow down my video. Will slow down my video, and my video will slow down. And that's because it's trying to play these effects, particularly third-party effects, will take a little bit longer to do, will be a little bit harder to do, and the computer has to process them. So if you are using say trap code shine there, it is going to be a little bit more involved, which means you may want to go here and click on this layer and go to the sequence menu and say render selection. And render selection will bring up a render thing and will render this clip. And once this clip is rendered, then it will play back real time. Now this saves us as a little render file in your project. And so it's just something that will save alongside the project and save in your media, which means it takes up space. And so that may be an issue for you. But we're going to render this out, and now it plays back smoothly. You'll see that now this whole section up here is green. It was red before. And red kind of meant up here when it was red, it said, hey, I can't play this real time. I can't play this full speed. I cannot play this full speed. I don't have that technology. I'm not that smart. I can't. My computer is only so powerful. And you're giving me this weird red giant thing that I've never worked with before. I can only do so much. But now it's a green line, and green means go. And yellow means, you know, maybe I can do this. I can probably do this. Hey, it's just a video clip. I can probably do this. But if I do put a weird effect like star glow in here, why would I put star glow in here? No reason. But if I put star glow in here, all of a sudden it turns red and says, hey, cool, you put star glow in here. Let's see. Let's do some star glow streak length. There's not really anything really worthwhile here in star glow. We can boost light a little bit, but not really doing much of anything for me in terms of there, but it is red dot. So it is red line, which means it's not giving me what it wants, and have it there. Now we'll go back to this. We'll get rid of this Gaussian, or we'll get rid of the shine. I'm going to keep the Gaussian blur. I kind of like the fade in, fade out thing. But that's the thing you can do. You can render effects. So while we're here, we're just looking through a little bit further. You can render some of these effects. We have some red giant VFX, some optical glow or Primat Keyer we can look at. We can look at a whole red giant suite in some future lesson. We have a lot of lessons to go through. Stylize, brush strokes. We could make this look brush strokey. Here we could do some brush strokes. Let's just crank up some brush strokes here. Again, red line says, hey, let's take this. Let's change the brush size to a little bit thicker. Oh, that's very brush strokey. The stroke angle. We could change the stroke length. We could make longer strokes there. Oh, it's very strokey. Cool. And we have it there. It's just paint on original image, which is very stroke there. And again, this may not play real time because it may. I just hit play. It's barely moving. Oh, look at that. It's dropping frames like crazy. Again, sequence. If I'm clicked on it, render selection. I can also render into out and have this be rendered into out based on there. Again, that's the brushstroke effects. We have that as an idea. Okay, so a couple things I do want to talk about. With any of these effects, say for example, I have this shot of this person here, and within this person, I say, this is me, I keep saying this person. I want to do the mosaic effect. And we're going to go here to mosaic effect and look at the mosaic. And under here is not the preset mosaic in and mosaic out, but the stylized mosaic. And we have the mosaic effect. This is going to put a mosaic on me. Now, the mosaic effect has some controls. We see the mosaic has a horizontal blocks. It's set at 10, so if you count it across, this would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You can count. And then vertical is 10 as well. I like my mosaics to be a little bit more. 25 by 25. There we go. So we sort of see me, but now I'm completely mosaiced out. Is what it is. Now, here's the thing I can do. I could say here, you'll see, just like with the opacity controls, I have the controls to create a mask. I can create a mask here before. After this, I can add some mask qualities inside here, and I can create this for the mosaic itself. This will create an elliptical mask, and it creates a circle, which I can put on my face there. So now as I drag, if I'm on the mask, I can drag the mask, and I can move the mask around, and now I'm kind of, hidden there. There's a control to feather this a little bit. I can feather this a little bit more, so it's partially mosaiced around me, but then on the edges it's a little softer on the edges of the mask. But let's go back to this layer. Let's click on the mask again. Now I can see the mask there. I have mask opacity. I can kind of delete or increase the mask if I wanted to. I can expand the mask, make it bigger or smaller. There, I'm going to leave it what it is. Leave it at 0. I can just hit reset over here and just leave it at 0. I have this. I can invert the mask and have, oh, that's weird. Oh, that's weird. Now, the bigger problem here is that with this mask that I have, this mask is here on my face, but my face moves. So it moves here. Now, what I could do is I could go back to the beginning of this. Let's do this the hard way first. We'll do this the hard way first. I'm going to hit the up arrow and go right to the beginning of this. And we're going to move the mask over here on my face right there. So now we're going to go here, and I'm going to say mask path. Now, I'll go maybe 1 second ahead. We can actually go here type in +100 on the number pad, and then I'm gonna take my mask, and I'm gonna take this mask, and I'm gonna move this mask over to here. It's gonna make another keyframe. So now it's moving over this 1 second from here to here. Except it didn't do a great job. I can go about halfway between, add another point, go a little bit further, 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 and then have this go off screen, and then maybe here. So now it's doing this mask like this. It's going here, across this path. Great, you wouldn't know who that is. You wouldn't know that that's me. I don't know. You know, do I look like me enough, despite a mosaic? You know, all that good looking. You can't stop the good looking. You know, the good looking just goes right to who you are as a person there. And so you can do it there. And then at the last second after I go away, you could say maybe right here, mask expansion. We'll just shrink the mask out really quickly so it goes away. Just like whoosh, goodbye mask. So now it's gonna do this. Yeah, I mean, I would know that's me. I would know that's me perfectly fine. Anyway, we can make it blockier. We could reduce the blocks down to 15 by 15. Make it look even less like me. Now, a more blocky me. I woke up this morning feeling pretty blocky. Anyway, thing we could do that there. The other thing we could do is say, hey, let's go here, let's turn the mask path off. It's gonna tell us this action will delete existing keyframes. Do you wanna continue? Yes, we do. Now I'm gonna go here and I'm gonna say, let's go to here. Let's go to the middle of this. Let's go to the middle of this and we're gonna go right here. Click on the mask, move the mask over my face here. So another thing that we can do is we can go to the mask here, and on the mask, you will see under mask path, there are some tracking controls. And we do have some tracking controls. We can track forward and we can track backward, and we can look at this as a track. So we can track this and try to track, you know, my perfect adorable face here and look at this and see if this will do this automatically for us, so we don't have to keyframe this at certain intervals and see how the system will work. Now there's a little wrench here, and I want to show you the little wrench here, and the wrench has controls to track position and rotation, and also position, scale, and rotation. So if I move my frame of my face forward, or if I rotate my face, it will try to track all those things. Now, I will be 100% honest with you, I don't always love the Premiere tracker controls for tracking masks. Is it the best tracker in the world? No. Would I rather go to After Effects? I'm sure, but it will do some good stuff, and it sometimes depends on the quality of your computer. It depends on what it does with the computer in terms of how it tracks. Now, the first thing I want to do here is I want to just look through this footage, and I'm going to go to about here, right to about this point, about 8:11 here, and I'm going to say right about here, I'm just going to say, let's just cut this clip in half. So I'm going to hit Command K here. Oops, sorry, didn't hit play here. Let me go to beginning here, right there. And we're just going to say Command K, and we're going to say Command K and cut this into 2 pieces, because right here, once I leave the frame, we don't need to mosaic me out. I mean, we don't need to mosaic me out anyway, but you know, for purposes, we're just gonna click on this clip, and this part of the clip, we're gonna delete it and just get rid of the mosaic here, because we don't really need this. But here, at this point here, we're gonna say, let's track me forward here. So we're gonna say right about here, on this clip, we're gonna look at this and say, somewhere in here, we're going to track forward. We're gonna go back to this frame that I had, 7:15 here, and we'll track right there. So I'm gonna click on the mask here, and on the mask path, we're gonna go to the mask path, and we're gonna track forward. And so I'm going to say, let's track this and see how this does. Maybe we'll track backwards first. Maybe we'll see how it does as I come into the frame, as this tracks. Now, one of the things I can do, and this is something new that I learned in here in the tracking, there's a control here that says preview. This is not normally on by default. Preview is not on. And I used to struggle with it all the time, because when I would do masks and when I would do tracking, I couldn't see what I was doing. The track wouldn't work out and wouldn't lend itself to showing me how the track was working. I think this is beneficial. I think having this off is not as nice as having this on. Now, will this slow down the system? Maybe the system works a little bit harder, but I don't think it's worth it to not have this little preview function on. So we're gonna leave this on and say track backwards and track this backwards and see what we get here. So let's track backwards and let's watch it. And so it's gonna track, and you're gonna see that it moves with my head, it follows my head. If it doesn't do a good job as it tracks my head backwards, that was not bad. Boom, right there. It did a good job tracking backwards and following my head along. And it made all these frames, all these keyframes. If you zoom in super close, you can see all these keyframes it made. Man, a whole bunch of keyframes. So we're gonna go to the end here, and we're gonna go to this part, and we're gonna track forward. Let's cross our fingers and hope, see how this does. tracking forward, following my head. I did a pretty good job. It lost my head there at the end there, but you know, my head was turned, so I guess it's okay. I might want to redo this mask expansion, delete those keyframes, and just once my head is out of the frame and once I'm facing the other way, it's not gonna, you know, you're not gonna recognize me from the back of the head. I'll just say mask expansion. Maybe we'll go a couple frames forward, and just to decrease the mask expansion, get rid of it. And maybe between here and here, I can just do like a dissolve here and just say Command D dissolve, and then put a cross dissolve so the mask just goes away and it just disappears right there. And so we just lose, so we have the version with the mask and then that just changes into the version without the mask. And so we have this tracked mask that looks like this. If you want to play with the tracker, play with the tracker. You can sometimes get some decent tracks out of there, sometimes not, but it's something to try. There is these controls that do that. We'll go there and have these effects inside of here. So I just want to show you that you can have some effects. Now, if, for example, I have a sequence where I want to put an effect on top of everything. For example, I go here and I say, I have this effect here called, let's go to the effects controls, and I have an effect here called time code. I like the new version of this. This is the new version, made metadata and time code burn-in. They had an old effect in the obsolete category called time code. I never liked it. I never thought it worked well. It was never cool to me. I never enjoyed it. Man, it hurt my feelings. I'm gonna go to here to metadata and time code burn-in, and I'm gonna drag this onto this clip. And what it's gonna do is it's gonna put a little time code in there and tell me the time code of the clip. Now, the time code, not necessarily accurate because it's saying 1336 and this is at 000. So what time code do I want? Let's see. What time code I want? So we're gonna do the metadata and time code burn-in and say, okay, under the metadata, it's saying the source time code, which means it's showing me the source clip's time code. We want to change that. We want to change that to the sequence time code and choose sequence time code. And now this starts at 000 and goes to 6 seconds or 5 seconds, whatever it goes to. So it shows me this and then it disappears. And so it starts here and then it goes there. Oh, I had the time code effect on this clip. Weird. I put time code in that one. Weird. Oh, a new version of Java. I don't want you. Cool. I don't see time code. Cool. Get rid of that. So this is the metadata and time code effect on here. We added the time code effect to that. And this is the metadata and time code burn-in effect on top of here like that. And so we have that playing through here. So let's take a look on this clip. Now, it happens on this clip. It doesn't happen on these clips or this clip, which is a problem, which is a concern of mine. So I'm going to delete this and say, let's go out of here and hop out of here. And we're going to start over a little bit differently. In this case, we're going to go to the project window and I'm going to go to File, New, and I'm going to go to New Adjustment Layer. Adjustment layers. If you worked in Photoshop, if you worked in After Effects, you might be familiar with adjustment layers. We can also get this here at the bottom. At the bottom, there's a little icon right here that is for new items. So if you go here and hover over this, it says new item down here. In new item, you will see new adjustment layer. It asks me about the settings for the adjustment layer. This is gonna be 1920 by 1080 at 24 frames a second, drop frame. Cool, adjustment layer. And it has this layer called adjustment layer. What the heck is an adjustment layer? Well, it's a thin piece of nothing. It's a thin piece of nothing. We're gonna drag it and put it on there. And we're gonna have this dragged all throughout all of this here. Now, the nice thing about adjustment layers is that we can use adjustment layers to put effects on adjustment layers. This is a thin, invisible piece of nothing. So this is transparent. You know, there is no visibility here. It's just a thin piece of invisibleness there. You know, there's nothing. There's nothing there whatsoever. Here, this puts nothing on there. But the fun thing about adjustment layers is we can go to effects and say, let's put metadata and timecode burn-in on top on here. And now the metadata is on top of this. And so it's through the whole thing. Now let's just change the timecode here. So we're gonna go to timecode. We're gonna say not source timecode, metadata source timecode. We're gonna say up here, let's go sequence timecode. So down the bottom, this is gonna be sequence timecode here. I like the graphic. I like that let's see, the opacity of this is, the size of this is this big. We can make it bigger or smaller. Well, let's make it smaller. We'll make it 12%, just a little tiny little there. And you actually move this position and put this over here in the corner there. So this is the sequence time code. This is running along here. Great. Opacity, we'll make this like 30%, just a little bit more opaque. You can change some other details. You can change the type of time code. The frame rate is at the source's frame rate, which is fine. You could offset the time code if you want to. Great. You can put a metadata label in here and say sequence time code. I think we're going to know that sequence time code, so I don't think we need the label. Let's move on. Line 2. Line 2, we're going to put here in line 2, we're going to put in the clips. Let's see, source time code, or let's do file name, boom. Okay, so this puts the name of the file that it's parked on up here. So let's look at the line 2 file name here. We're gonna go to position here and say position. We can actually drag this little icon. We'll put this up here and say that we're on clip BD216601. Great name here. We're on that clip right there. And then we're gonna go here and have line 2. We'll make this a little bit smaller. We'll go to size. We'll go here to a little bit smaller there, just a little bit, just so we know what the name of the clip is. We'll go to line 3. Under line 3, we're going to change this to source time code. And then we're going to take the source times code position. Line 3, click on the metadata and put this here. So now we also have the source's time code and the time code. Yeah, we have all that information inside of there. We'll make this a little bit smaller, just so we have the source time code, and see if we can do anything to make this. Yeah, we'll take this, the size is small, excellent, meta display, cool, that's all right. We have this here, and then we'll do one more, line 4, and there's all these different things we can put in here, what scene it is, what shot it is, whether it's good or not, I don't know, what the video codec, the video resolution, the camera roll it came from, a comment in here, any of the comments that we have for the files, etc., any of the information we want in there. Here, let's take a look at the sequence time code or generate time code or something else, the sound time code, source time code, I don't know, something else there. Yeah, the project name, sequence clip name, sequence duration. We could put it there. So there's a couple different variations of things we could do. We could do another sequence time code and have another sequence time code. In case we wanted a secondary sequence time code, we could put that one over here and have a sequence time code. Yeah, and so we have those kind of circumstances inside of there and have all those variations and show that in there. And that would show up on top of everything. And because it's on top of everything, because the adjustment layer is on a top layer, even the adjustment layer was on video 3, anything else underneath this. So that's an important point. Anything else underneath this would have this effect on it, would have the time code display, what's called a time code burn-in information on it there, like so. But we could use this for other reasons. So if we said, I know, forget time code burn, we just spent all that trouble making all that wonderful time code, we could say, hey, let's get rid of this, let's delete that, let's go here and say, let's make this whole thing black and white. Oh man, does anybody remember where the black and white effect was? Let's see, video effects, let's see if we can remember. It's not under generate, it's not under distort, it's not under adjust, it's under image controls, Image controls black and white. We could put a black and white on this and make the whole thing black and white. And now the whole sequence is black and white. Don't bother trying to put effects on every single thing. Just put an effect on the one thing and make it so. What's nice is that here with the adjustment layer, so say for example, we had black and white, and let's say we put in some noise in here. We went into video effects, we went into noise and grain, and we added some noise in here. So now we're adding both effects on here, and we're saying let's use some noise and make this image a little bit noisy. Since this is black and white, we won't use color noise. Now, and here's an important distinction. We have the black and white effect and we have the noise, which is adding, just to show you this, it's adding colorful noise. And so this noise is colorful. If we swap the order of this, it would be black and white noise because it's the black and white first and then adding the noise. If we did the noise first and then the black and white second, it would add the black. You understand the difference. There's a difference there in which one's adding first, which one's adding second. But point being is we can go in here and say, hey, we don't need to put this in any order because we can just make this don't use color noise. And now it would be black and white anyway. I don't know, there's not much of a difference there, but sometimes the order in which you do effects, like for example, if I said here, let's do the mosaic effect, just to show you an idea. The mosaic effect, and said added the mosaic effect and made a mosaic, and then I said blur and added the Gaussian blur. The Gaussian blur being second is going to blur the mosaic. And so the mosaic ends up being blurry, which actually looks more like me. But if it's mosaic after the Gaussian blur, it's going to do the Gaussian blur first, and then it's going to be blurred and mosaiced, and the mosaic doesn't become blurred. You get the idea. Anyway, I'm going to undo a whole bunch and go back to this noise and this black and white. So this noise and this black and white, I can go here and say, now with this layer, with this adjustment layer, I could do like a mask around a certain area and just have the mask fall into here and have this be like so. So we can put a mask on an effect, or we can put a mask on a whole layer if the layer is the adjustment layer, because now the adjustment layer is kind of a layer that's there. So this is kind of cool. This is kind of a weird, thing. This is a little bit aggressive, but you get this kind of playful, shape that's defined by the adjustment layer. I don't know, just a thing we can do, an idea that we can approach, and something we can play with as kind of a look, kind of a thing, kind of just a look, a stylistic thing that works throughout the entire sequence. Adjustment layers are friends, and we can add in adjustment layers or cut up adjustment layers, have them only last for a certain section. We can take this adjustment layer, have it only last from here to here, and just be from here to here. So now it's only in this section that has the adjustment layer. Things you can do. Would it work really well for this scene? I don't think so, but I just want to show you the idea that it could be done as there. So those are adjustment layers. One last thing I want to show you is we can go in here and we have this like so. You'll notice right here in the small print here that there's a little effects button, and in here there's an effects button that shows you that this is now purple. And purple means that I've added an effect, an outside effect like Gaussian blur onto there. If I get rid of my Gaussian blur, that purple goes away and it goes back to good old gray. If I make a change here to something normal like scale, and I scale this up, boom, and I scale this up, it's going to turn yellow. And yellow means that I've done something to the original clip with the regular motion, opacity, or timer mapping controls. I've done something to change this automatically. I've made some basic change to this. Here, even with the audio, if I change the levels of the audio at all, it puts a little yellow icon just to say, I changed this somewhat there. We're gonna go back to the Gaussian blur. Now, if I do Gaussian blur plus scale, boom, it's gonna make green. And green is, well, yellow and purple make green. I don't know if that's true. That's probably not really true, but it's somewhere a combination. So it's using both an outside effect that I've added in here, plus I've made a change to the regular scale, and I've done some changes automatically to the scale. Now, right now we have this. We're going to undo the scale adjustment. So this is going to turn back to purple because now it's only doing a scale adjustment. That's fine. And now we have here, I could say, I'll have this, we'll change the blurriness amount to 200. We'll make this super blurry, just so it's really blurry, and it unblurs. Boom. And so now I have this unblur effect. I'll change this back to horizontal and vertical, so it's blurring both the horizontal and vertical. Okay, sure. And this is doing that. We have that effect. And say, for example, I love this effect. I love this effect, and I think it's great. It's fantastic. It's beautiful. I can go here. I can right-click on this, and I can go Save Preset. And here, by Save Preset, I can save this Gaussian blur as a preset of doing this exact thing. And I'll say Save Preset, and I'll call it Gaussian. I'll call this Gaussian to clean or something. So this is going to transition from Gaussian to clean, and I'll say Gaussian to clean 0.5, which means over half a second it's going to go here. And I can say here on this effect will transition from a 200 H and V, that's horizontal and vertical, H and V blur to 0 over a half second. Much like a camera focusing up. Cool. And I'll save this Gaussian to clean 0.5. And then here, I save this effect, and it's here now in presets. Gaussian to clean 5, it's there inside of there. Preset properties, I can look at it. It will tell me what the preset does. It'll give me some information. If I right click and go to preset properties, it shows me that information there. And if I want to take this clip, for example, and say, let's grab this and throw this on here, I could do this and it would do the same thing. Right here, it would do the same Gaussian to clean. So if there is effects that I love, that I think, hey, I want to use this effect regularly, yeah, I can save, I've made something amazing. I can save effects and have an entire preset. And you can take this preset, you can export this preset, throw this on to, you can actually make your own little preset folders, have a new preset bin, have it be like Chad's awesome effects or something. You could import presets, you can export presets. So I can take this preset, export this preset. Here I can say, let's put this in the desktop, for example. We'll go here to desktop. We'll call this Gaussian to clean, and we're going to save this here. It's going to be a Premiere Pro filter preset, and I can save this. And if we look on the desktop, we'll probably see that we can go here to desktop, and then here, most recently, we have up here Gaussian to clean, Premiere Pro, Premiere FP set, Premiere Effect preset. There we go. And so I can take that. That's a 5 kilobyte file, tiny, put it on a Google Drive, put it on your hard drive, put it somewhere, and you can have this preset for anything you want to use it for, anywhere you want to use it. There's a whole bunch of other effects we can look at, and there's effects that I think that we can really focus on and we can really explore, like the keying effects will be a whole nother lesson. We can talk about all the keying effects and the controls, etc. Some of the effects for doing stuff like, I don't know, some other video effects for doing tracking or doing other things, doing some special things. The Red Giant collection is a whole nother group of effects. The immersive effects, if we ever talk about VR 360, we can look at some of the immersive effects and some of those kind of things. But I think for this, we just explore some effects. If you're doing straight drama, you probably want to minimize the number of effects you're using because you probably don't want to use a whole bunch of effects. But if you're doing other stuff, man, effects are sometimes cool. You're doing some kind of sizzle reel or some kind of, promo highlight reel or something like that. Man, throw in some effects, have some fun. They're going to be useful. There's going to be clearly a collection of effects called utilities, which is just a Cineon converter over here. But there are effects. So check this lesson out. See if you want to play with some effects. It'll help you out. Again, we'll talk about the transition between Adobe Premiere and going into Adobe After Effects in a future lesson. Probably in the next lesson or two, we'll go into Adobe After Effects and talk about effects inside of there. But there's a whole bunch of effects you can add and a whole bunch of things you can do to manipulate them and add keyframes and have fun with them. All right, so keep editing, make some cool stuff. Let me know. I'll talk to you in the next lesson.